Curious to hear from our panel comparisons between Michelle Obama's speech and Ann Romney's speech, how you think they compare, whether or not that's a fair comparison. Roland, first time we've heard from you.
I would say that's an unfair comparison, not even close. As I listened to her speak, I immediately thought back to 1988 when Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. stood in front of the delegates in Atlanta in 1988, and that portion of the speech where he said, I understand where you come from. Talked about where he was born, how he was born, didn't have a name. And so the first half of that speech was essentially her saying, I understand. I understand exactly where you're sitting. We understand what you're going through. When you hear that, all of a sudden you're saying, wait a minute. Here's somebody literally explaining you're just paying off your student debt, $1 trillion of student debt right now in this country right now. That is a way for you to connect with somebody. I think Ann Romney tried to do that last week when she talked about the ironing board and talked about living in the basement apartment. That's what voters want to hear so they can say, I need to know that you get me, that when you're sitting in that Oval Office, that you will think about me, you will understand me, you will be representing me. That was great. That was extremely effective. And frankly, the president needs to listen to her speech and convey a lot more of that in order for him to connect, I think, with
It is
votes.
extraordinary, this election, on both for Ann Romney and Michelle Obama, the extent to which the campaigns are relying on the wives of the candidates to really put forth a message. I mean, both very strong, powerful women.
In both conventions so far, the most memorable speeches have come from women. It reminds me a lot of the Olympics. You know, where the women athletes were the really ones that we found most interesting. I actually think both women did their husbands a great deal of good. I agree that Michelle Obama's speech was extremely effective, but so was Ann Romney's. Let's face it. I mean, she had a story to tell to humanize her husband, and it was a story most Americans didn't know, and she got it across very, very well.
And I think the big difference was Ann Romney's speech was designed to inform people about a candidate who most Americans don't know. This was his biggest audience ever, 30 million watched his speech. He is still a newcomer on the political scene, as all challengers are. And the speech by the First Lady tonight was designed to remind people about the things that they like best about Barack Obama that's gotten lost because the economy is so bad and the country's on the wrong track. So one task, inform, the other, remind. Very different missions.
Not only to remind, but also to say he's the same person you used to love 4 years ago, and he's still the same guy. And by the way, he hasn't forgotten where he came from. I mean, this audience here erupted in "Yes, We Can."
I know, which we have not. I have not heard that for a while.
Yeah,
look,
exactly.
To remind, because look, he's muddied, he's bloodied, he's been an incumbent president in very tough times. So whether you're a fan or an opponent, he's very different. She's trying to somehow recreate the magic mood of 2008. We will not have an election like 2008.
Right.
But the biggest takeaway from the night is the Democrats begin this gathering with an unfamiliar position. In 2006 and 2008, they had a huge intensity edge. In 2010, Republicans had the intensity edge. At the moment, Republicans have a narrower intensity edge. Republicans think the electorate is still more like 2010 than 2008. You heard her. We must never work harder. Every speech tonight, including her to cap the night, I thought very effective in speaking to the Democratic base. The bigger question is, after 4 years of an incumbent president, what about that small slice out there? That's not mostly, she's mostly talking to the people in this hall and people like them around the country. Democrats
because
who do not give up and turn out.
How transferable is an endorsement, even coming from a spouse? That's the ultimate issue in politics. Candidates stand on their own feet, on their own merit. But Romney has to do it. President Obama has to do it.
But in terms of mobilizing the base, her decision to put voting in sort of the same category as serving overseas, as some of the many struggles that we as a nation have gone through over the years, I thought was very effective, as a way to get out.
First of all, because she brings all this credibility having worked for veterans. I mean, it was a nice turn right there at the end to channel that energy. But you have to say, Ari, the intensity in the hall, maybe it's because it's a bigger hall, they have a lot more people, but there does seem to be more intensity in the hall than what we saw in Tampa.
I don't have to say.
And keep in mind, by also talking about the voting piece, you're dealing with voter suppression efforts, you're dealing with enthusiasm as well. And so what she is trying to say is, yes, this is a fundamental right as an American, the issue of voting.
Certainly people respond well to that here in the hall. CNN's Piers Morgan is standing by with